Pues para mí el chiste siempre ha sido cuando se habla de lo que es montar tu
For
propia
me,
empresa,
the key in starting your own business,
y
especially in
hacer
taking that
especialmente
first step,
ese primer brinco, ¿no? Que uno hace de un
throwing
camino
yourself
más
out there
pavimentado en la vida o en los negocios para
and starting
lanzarse
a new enterprise.
y tratar
This may include a social
bueno,
service
lanzar
project.
una empresa, o también puede ser
The key
una obra social,
is to realize
un proyecto.
that one
Es siempre,
always
bueno,
faces
siempre uno
fear.
enfrenta el miedo, ¿no?
Fear of
De
being
estar solo, de
alone
estar fuera de
or
un
being outside
contexto
of an institutional
de una
or
empresa,
perhaps
de
an
una
academic context.
institución académica. Y creo que el primer
The
paso
first
es
step,
superar
I believe,
ese miedo.
is to overcome that
Pero
fear.
pensar que,
To think that that fear
ese
will
miedo
not exist,
no exista,
or that you
o
will not
que
have
no
to
lo vayas a
confront it,
enfrentar,
is an
es una
illusion.
ilusión. Y en realidad, después de
In
ya
reality,
casi 15
after
años
almost 15 years as an
en
entrepreneur
eso,
myself,
siendo emprendedor, entre comillas, con mis propias
I
empresas,
still have that
yo
fear.
sigo con ese temor como
I have a healthy
sano,
fear
saludable cada día,
faced
¿no? O sea,
daily,
y
which
eso
forces you to
te
recognize the
hace
risks
reconocer los
you
riesgos que
take,
estás tomando, pero también
and also
te impulsa, ¿no?
pushes
Te da la
you,
energía
it gives you the energy to pursue your project.
sobre el cual has decidido lanzar. Me acuerdo muy
I
bien
remember well
una
a conference
conferencia
I
que hice en la
participated
Universidad de
in
Harvard
at
en
Harvard
los Estados Unidos,
University
en Boston,
several years ago,
hace varios años después de la
just
quiebra
after the
de
failure
mi
of my
primera
first
empresa.
company.
Pues yo he vivido los
I have
últimos años
experienced in my last few
muchos
years
éxitos en
many
las empresas, pero en
successes,
realidad
but
mi
in
primera
reality,
empresa
my
quedó
first company
terminó en
ended in
quiebra. Y
bankruptcy.
creo que hay poca gente
I
que
believe there are
se toma
few
el tiempo
people who
necesario
take the
cuando se habla
necessary time to
de este tema,
consider
de hablar también
failure,
del fracaso, que es parte del
which is
camino, en
part of
realidad,
the road of the
del emprendedor.
entrepreneur.
Y uno tiene que tener
One has to have
ese
respect
respeto
for
para
failure
lo que es el fracaso y la
and the
posibilidad
possibility of failure.
del fracaso. Estábamos en una
So
conferencia
we
hablando
were
de
at
lo
the
que es
conference speaking
empezar
about
de nuevo,
how to
starting
start
over.
over.
Entonces, esta conferencia en Harvard. Y eso
I
sentado al
was
lado
sitting
de
next to Martin
que es un
Varsavsky,
emprendedor
an
argentino,
Argentinian entrepreneur, founder of
fundador
Educar
de
in
Educar
Argentina,
en Argentina, que lo hizo con
started with
la
the
Fundación
Bill Clinton Foundation.
Es uno de mis
One of my personal heroes, a billionaire, yet
por un lado,
a
pero también
very
muy
simple
sencillo.
man.
Siempre ha tenido ese aspecto de
He has
responsabilidad
always
social,
demonstrated a
responsabilidad humana en su
sense of
trabajo.
social
El
responsibility,
blog favorito
of
en
human
internet,
responsibility in his work.
martinvarsavsky.net.
His blog
Estuve
is also my favorite blog on the
esta conferencia de
internet,
lado suyo, yo pensando, ay, por fin
martinvarsavsky.net.
tengo la oportunidad de conocerlo,
So
pero
I'm next to
mira
him,
que en el contexto
and I'm
hablando
thinking, at last
de
I
mi
meet this
fracaso, de mi
man,
quiebra, o sea,
but
yo pensaba, qué mala
ironically,
suerte,
in the
¿no?
context
Lo
of talking
conozco
about my
desde
failure,
tantos años
my
en ese
bankruptcy. What
Entonces
luck!
entró
I have not met
un
him in so many
estudiante
years,
en
and
toda
now I meet him this way.
administración de
Then a
empresas,
student
la
in the
maestría ahí
MBA
en
program at
Harvard.
Harvard gets up
Entonces
and
pregunta,
asks, Mr. Varsavsky,
señor Barsavsky,
how does one know
uno cómo sabe
when to start a
si
business?
debe
Like,
lanzarse como
what's the
emprendedor, como
sign
entrepreneur?
one should look
¿No?
for?
¿Cuál es la señal que uno debe buscar?
And even though
Y
the
aunque
student was
dirigió la
addressing the
pregunta a él,
question to Mr.
como
Varsavsky,
estuve sentado a su lado, los dos empezamos
we both
nos
started
empezamos
to
a reír
laugh
al mismo tiempo, ¿no?
simultaneously.
Y él
In
y
those
yo,
days, I was a young
en
man,
esa
30
época,
years
yo de
old,
30 años, y
and
él
he,
como,
one of the
uno
most
de los
famous and
emprendedores más
outstanding entrepreneurs
famosos
in
y
the world,
destacados del
not
mundo,
just
de
Latin
la
America.
comunidad latina del mundo.
And there we are,
Y
laughing
nos empezamos a
together.
reír y me dice,
He leans and asks me softly, why am I laughing?
Pero usted, ¿por qué se ríe? Porque
That's
la
a silly
pregunta,
question, I
estamos como
said.
suspirando, hablando ahí en la mesa,
And he
preguntando
said,
sin que la audiencia nos pudiera
I thought the
escuchar.
same.
Sí, porque es una pregunta boba. Y él
So,
dice, "Ay, pues yo también
we
pienso lo
answer.
mismo". Y entonces empezamos a dar
There
nuestras
is no
respuestas los dos.
sign.
Mira, porque en realidad no hay señal.
That is an
No existe.
illusion,
Ese es una ilusión, es un mito.
a myth.
Eso es un impulso
There
que
is an
existe,
impulse within
que
us,
es,
an
nativo en
inherent,
uno.
innate
Eso es
impulse.
algo que
In
es al
fact,
revés, en realidad.
the opposite is
Uno
true.
se tiene que cohibir,
One
uno
has
tiene
to
que,
inhibit,
restringir
to
ese impulso
restrict
de
that
lo que es lanzar
impulse to
y hacer
start
su
an
propia empresa. Si uno
enterprise.
espera que le
If one
llegue
waits
un
for a
día
specific sign
una
from the
señal
universe,
del universo, de
from
Dios,
God or
que
whatever,
creyera,
you will
eso
never
nunca
start
lo
your
va a
own
hacer.
business. because that is something that comes from inside yourself, and one spends all the time thinking that, no, I cannot stay within these four walls. I have to get out and realize my dreams and start my own business. It can be in any enterprise. It could be selling handcrafts. It could be in technology, communications, real estate, anything. It does not matter. The impulse is the same. So I believe above all else, and in some way this may appear surprising, the kids to know how to restrict that impulse and how to know when you are really ready to take that first step, to jump in. I have seen many young people taking that first step, and I say this with humility, without pedantry, because I lived it. I made a mistake. I took that first step not having the adequate training, but even more important, without having a mentor, a teacher, someone from whom to learn the necessary steps to start and manage a successful business. That is why my first business failed. I started very much alone with a partner, but equally young. We did not know much. We did have a great idea, but another illusion and myth is that if you have a marvelous idea, you will have success. In fact, there are plenty of good ideas in this world, but the key is to execute a business plan. It is not the idea per se. So we had a fantastic idea, and we had a clientele. We were producing software to be used by governments to allow citizens to pay taxes or pay fines over the internet. But we did not really know how to manage and make a business grow. We took loans that we should have not taken, and that resulted in bankruptcy. That was over 10 years ago. If we had taken more time to learn, and that does not mean we have to wear a tie and be in a boring job and not be following your own dreams. It simply means that you should take a couple of years working in a job related to the business you want to start, the business or social enterprise you have in mind, learning and studying carefully success in that industry or area of interest.
Con mucho cuidado el éxito en esa industria o esa área de interés y lo ideal, lo óptimo.
And optimally, you do it with someone who understands your final objective, that you want to embark on as an entrepreneur and start a business and get out of the institutional context in which you find yourself. But do it with caution and take your time. I wrote a book a few years ago about the 5 rules to start your own business, but not just about practical rules like having a business plan, obtaining the necessary capital, or studying the market and the reactions from consumers. Obviously, these rules are good and appropriate, but they are well known. The rules I refer to in my book are instead rules of personal conduct and spiritual guidance about the personal approach to the path of the entrepreneur. We do not have time here to talk about all the 5 rules, but the most important one is to know yourself beyond the barriers we face and the self-images we want to convey to the world, trying to know instead your own self as it is and how it manifests itself in business in a real form, in a raw form, so to speak, without color, and finding out what motivates you, to find out whether what motivates you is the money, recognition, power, freedom, approval from others, from the family. Those are very different impulses. There are many people who start a business motivated by money, But what I have learned from interviews with hundreds of entrepreneurs in the world, some very famous, mentioned in my book, is that in very few cases the essential impulse was money. In the majority of the cases, is something different, is to have the courage to expand yourself and realize your dreams. In many cases, it is to get the approval of your father in doing something great. You have to study in detail what is that internal impulse and learn how to channel that impulse. I finish by stating and admitting what has motivated me, and there are many people in my business. We have some 1,200 employees in 26 countries throughout the world on the technology side and the real estate. And I believe that if you ask them, 99% of them would say that what Kaleil wants is to have a large company, to have commercial success, to have financial success. And obviously, these are rules of the game in the business world, but that is not what it is. I do not get up every day saying to myself, I want to be rich, or I want to earn lots of money today, or I want to reach a certain financial goal in my business. That is part of my life in real terms, but that is not my real impulse. It is to overcome the fear of failure and the wish to reach the goals I have set for myself. That is really my internal fuel. That is the essence. And knowing this, and it took me many years to realize it, this helps me to select appropriate business partners, people who complement and balance my own impulse. That internal fuel also sometimes pushes me to take excessive risks in business, extending myself excessively. So, over the years, I have selected financial vice presidents, for example, who are more disciplined, who restrict me in some ways, or partners in business with a greater capacity than mine to draw long-range plans, people who are more structured in their thinking. But the only reason I have been able to do this, which has worked well over the years, is because I first started with a process of self-knowledge and recognition of what really drives me as an entrepreneur, instead of what is fashionable or what is thought by the world about what an entrepreneur should be. Recognizing instead what is my real internal impulse.
Esta es una realización de Zona de Enfoque, construyendo la cultura de la responsabilidad humana.